Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Today we will talk about the fatal attraction, the attraction that is dangerous and the attraction that kills. Our Sadhguru Kripa Kar. Man is always looking for ras, meaning pleasure or enjoyment. And as per Gurbani, there are two types of ras man experiences. One is the ras from within and the other the ras from outside, which is the ras of the senses. Guru says, man, if you want to seek ras, seek the ras within you, as it is the biggest ras that you will ever experience. Guru Ramdas Ji says in Gurbani, Kaya Nagar Mein Ram Ras Uttam. Guru says the biggest ever ras that you will experience, O man, is inside you, the ras of Nam. But man prefers to seek the ras from outside, the ras of Maya, which is just temporary and which is fatal. The ras from outside depends on circumstances, while the ras from within is independent of circumstances. If I can repeat this, the ras from outside depends on circumstances, while the ras from within is independent of circumstances. The ras from outside goes up and down and is momentary, while the ras from inside is permanent and it keeps increasing all the time. Now, let's move on. All the senses in our body have accepted the mind to be in charge. If I can repeat, all the senses in our body have accepted the mind to be in charge. Bhai Gurudas Ji says, Dehi andar ek man indri parwana. He says, in the mind, whose orders are obeyed by all the senses. He says, in the body, the mind is whose orders are obeyed by all the senses. The mind is in total control of the whole body. The mind sits behind all our indriya, all our senses, and controls them. When we relate to ras or pleasures of the body, or the pleasures that the body experiences, we think it is the senses that are enjoying the ras. This is an illusion actually. The eyes sees, but the mind enjoys. The tongue tastes, but the mind enjoys. The ears hear, but the mind enjoys. Now let's move forward. The mind has become so ignorant that it is not able to tell between the good and the bad. The good ras and the bad ras. The permanent ras and the temporary ras. Bhagat Ravidas Ji says, Madho, abidya hit keen. He says, man, you are so in love with ignorance. Babek, deep malin. Bhagat Ji says, just like a lamp becomes dim because of the soot of the glass on the glass. The mind has become dim because of the soot of ignorance. The mind has lost its clarity to tell between good and bad. Now what happens? Obeying the mind, the senses chase the false ras, the false pleasure, the false ras, which is a fatal pleasure. Bhagat Ravidas Ji says, be careful. This is a fatal attraction. He uses examples of animals to tell us the ras of senses and what it does. Bhagat Ji calls this a weakness. He uses 5 examples, 5 animals, a deer, a fish, a bumblebee, a moth, and an elephant. He says, Mrig, Meen, Preng, Patang, Kunchara, Ek Dokh Vinas. He says, all these animals only have one weakness each. And look at what happens to them. He uses the first example of a deer. When a hunter goes hunting, he says, he takes a small clay pot, fixes a small piece of leather on the pot, the mouth of the pot, and makes an insertion in the leather. He then takes a leather feather, inserts half of it in the hole, and then he makes slow in and out movements, scratching the leather, creating a sound, or it's called naad in Punjabi. The ears are known to be the biggest weakness of a deer. The deer hears this sound and is immediately attracted to it and is drawn towards the sound. It obliviously goes and stands right in front of the hunter as if it's in trance. The hunter then shoots the deer. a weakness of the ear. Just one weakness. Seeking pleasure from the sound kills the deer. Bhagavad uses a fish for the next example. Listen to this. The fish is known for its weakness of being attracted to taste, the weakness of the tongue. When someone goes fishing, we all know that you use a bait. He uses a bait to catch the fish. The fish is willing to turn its back to the water, which is the life support of the fish, for that little piece of bait. Bhagavad says, the weakness for the taste, the weakness of the tongue kills the fish. Just to sidetrack, just like that, man turns his back towards God, who is his life support, for little pleasures of life. Now let's come back. The next example Bhagavad uses is a bumblebee. The bumblebee is known for its weakness of being attracted to smell. The weakness of the nose. It flies towards the smell coming from the lotus flower, sits on the lotus flower and loses itself to the smell. As night falls, the flower closes and the bumblebee dies. Bhagavad says the weakness for smell, the weakness of the nose kills the bumblebee. Now let's move on. Just one weakness and look at what's happening to these animals. Bhagavad uses a moth as the next example. When a moth sees flame, it is attracted to it. The weakness of the sight of the flame. The weakness of the ears drives the moth towards the flame, and the moth thus flies into the flame and kills itself. Bhagavad says the moth dies because of one weakness, the weakness of the eyes. Now the last example Bhagavad uses, listen to this. An elephant is known for its sexual appetite. The hunter makes a very big hole, covers it with grass and bushes, and places an effigy of a female elephant on the covered hole. The elephant, overtaken by its desires, chases towards the effigy of the elephant and falls into the hole and is captured by the hunter. Bhagavad says all these animals only had one weakness, and look at what happened to them. Bhagavad says, Panch dog asad jame taaki ketak. He said, man, they all died because of one weakness, and oh man, they only had one. You have 5 weaknesses within you, which are out of control, out of your control. What hope do you have? Imagine what is happening to us daily. We fall in this trap daily, every moment. We are so ignorant that we can't tell. Let me repeat the above Bhagavad. Madho abedya hetakeen babek deep maleen. We are so in love with our ignorance and our ability to see clearly has been covered by the soot of ignorance. Pyari Sat Sangat Ji, Bhagavad says, the attraction to the rust of senses can be fatal. Guru Amar Das Ji tells us in Anand Sahib, Pyas na jaye hort kitta jichar haras palle na paaye, that you will not be able to run away from this thirst of Maya, the thirst for the rus from Maya, until you attain the taste of Nam Ras. You will not be able to turn or take yourself away from the rus of Maya until you attain the taste of Nam Ras. And once you attain Har Ras, Nam Ras, Guru says, Keh Nanak, Hor An Ras, Sab Visray, Jahar Vasai Manai. That all the other outside pleasures and rus are forgotten when Nam Ras develops in our body, in our mind. To summarize and conclude, there are 2 types of rus that man experiences. One is the rus from within, and the other the rus from outside, which is the rus of senses. The rus from outside is only temporary and fatal. It will only bring grief. The rus from inside is the biggest rus. It is permanent and will bring you permanent bliss and joy. So let's connect to the rus from inside and escape the grief of false rus.